Welcome, football fans. Buckle up for another hard-hitting episode of Player 54 Podcast, an independent show focused solely on alternative and opportunity football. From a sunny Southwest Florida studio, here is your host, Michael Lathrop.
Hello, football fans. This is episode 136, Kick and Punt Like a Bird. Welcome back to another episode of Player 54 Podcast. Today, we welcome Arena Football One's Washington Wolfpack kicker and punter, Evan Byrd, to discuss his football journey and more. Welcome, Evan. I appreciate you taking the time to appear on the show to discuss your football journey.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm ecstatic for this. I've never been on a podcast before.
Really?
Never, no.
It's interesting. You think about all the number of players out there and in their careers that you would think that would have somehow, whether it would have been a team show, a league show, or anything just within the spaces. Oh, it's pretty cool. But so we'll just kind of get started here before we really dive into the nitty gritty part of our thing. I think it might be best if you take a moment to kind of share when the sport of football became an interest to you. So can you walk us through the early stages of when, football kind of like, oh, hello, this is something pretty cool. What stage of the journey was it? Was it grade school? Or, just kind of walk us through it a little bit.
Well, I kind of always knew I wanted to play football just because, like, my dad did, my brother did. But, the thing that a lot of people don't know about me is I actually come from a family of baseball players.
Oh.
My grandfather actually, I don't know if he got drafted. He recently passed away, but
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he's the one that actually got me into kicking. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of college MLB baseball players in my bloodline. So it was as a kid, it was kind of always assumed that was going to be my route, was to be a baseball pitcher. But I got introduced into kicking when I was around 8 years old or so. I was just at my grandparents' house, and my uncle kicked in high school, and he got a college scholarship offer to kick. And so I just kind of picked it up here and there. And, I didn't really start taking it seriously until I was probably 8th, 9th grade year of high school. And, it was around, as a freshman, I got named the starter after the second game. And, it was from that point on I was the only freshman starting. And, I started all 10 games, all my high school career, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. But, I don't really start taking it serious until about 9th grade. It wasn't until probably about 11th grade that I started to realize, okay, I'm a little bit better at this than I think I am. 11th grade going into my senior year. And, I started going to a few camps here and there. And I went to a local kicking camp that was, in North Alabama, where I was born and raised. And I actually won the camp. And I got named like preseason all area team as a kicker. And, I won a few camps. I went to UAB. I went to, South Alabama. Went to Jacksonville State. There were a lot of camps that I went to. But, my senior year came along. First game of my senior year, I had a 43 or 46 yard net punting average, which is pretty insane. That's pretty much the average in the NFL.
Yeah,
which is good. It is high school. You can't really compare Jalen Waddle to Buck Davis from cornbread fed Alabama.
Right.
But so I ended up getting offered by Alabama A&M, little HBCU, D1 FCS out of Huntsville, Alabama. Norman, Alabama, actually. They're pretty prideful about being from Norman. But and so, this was during COVID. This is during 2020, in the midst of a global pandemic. I think it's a hoax, personally. That's just me. But so my first semester at Alabama A&M, I everything was online. We didn't do anything as a team. We didn't practice. We didn't. It just kind of felt like I wasn't really a college football player. And it just kind of had my self esteem down. I didn't really, being an immature 18-year-old, I didn't really see any future in what I was doing. So, in hindsight, I see this as a mistake, but God has a reason for everything, and I'm very big in my faith. And I dropped out of college and enlisted in the Air Force. Yeah, and that was something I just never texted any of my coaches back. Pretty much ghosted all of them, and in just a few months, I was off to basic training. And that ended up being like I said, huge mistake. And I thought it was over. And so I graduated basic training, and my grandparents, they brought my car to me while I was at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. And I don't know if they did this on purpose to this day. Still have no idea. But they left all of my kicking equipment in my car. And I thought that was kind of strange. I didn't ask them to bring that. And they left all my footballs, my sticks, my tees, my cleats, everything. And so I was just like, you know what? Why not? Let's go out to the parade field and see if we can kick some field goals. And on the parade field, they had an F-15 like parked out there, like decommissioned. It's just kind of more of a statue.
Sure.
And so I was using the vertical stabilizers on the F-15 as a field goal. And I measured it out, and I don't know the exact distance, but it was, I was kicking it through the F-15 from about 50, 60 yards away, and it was just right then and there. I was just like ripping my bald head out, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I kind of realized I made the biggest mistake in my life at that point. And I mean, that was just kind of a rough time for me being in the Air Force. I don't really talk about that a lot to anybody, but that was, just mental headspace, absolute worst time of my life. I mean, I was mentally where I was absolute rock bottom, not a shadow of a doubt. I hated myself every day. And so anyway, I ended up getting kicked out of the Air Force. Fun fact. Yeah. Now the story's getting juicy. Sauce it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it wasn't for anything bad. It was just wrong place, wrong time, wrong administration, being in front of the wrong people. If this had been the military 20 years ago, I'd still be in. But, anyway, I moved to Arkansas, and my family had convinced me to go to Arkansas State in Jonesboro. And I was just going to go to college there. I was thinking, while I'm there, I signed a D1 FCS scholarship, so who's to say I can't earn a D1 FBS walk-on spot,
Sure.
And so, I went up there, and right before the summer that I started attending classes, they had a little camp. And, I wasn't eligible to walk on, so I just figured I'd go to the camp because, if you're not eligible, you can't even go to walk-on tryouts if you're not registered or eligible through the NCAA, right? I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yep.
Found that out the hard way getting to that. But, I went to that camp, and my dad had a heart attack that morning. Yeah, it's crazy. So I drove him to the hospital like 2 a.m. the night before that camp. I mean, I had to be up there in Jonesboro like 7 or 8 a.m., something like that. And, I'm with him at 6 a.m. at the hospital getting him discharged out of there. He got lucky, he had a stent put in. My brain is fried. I'm not in any good shape to be going out there kicking in front of these, coaches.
Sure.
So I went out there and I did kick, and not my best day kicking, to be completely honest. But Cody Schexnader, if you know that name, he's the special teams analyst and coordinator at Ole Miss now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he was the one that was currently the special teams analyst at Arkansas State at the time. And after the camp was all said and done with, he was like, "Hey, I know you really beat yourself down, and you didn't really have the best day today. But I've seen some of your film, and I saw a few glimpses of it at this camp today. Let me get your phone number, and then we'll stay in contact. And after the season's over with, because the roster's full by that point, it's fall camp while this was going on. So he was like, let me get your phone number, and then I'll stay in touch with you. And then after the season over with, we'll see about getting a walk on spot, right?" And so I was like, praise God, this is actually going to happen, right? Wrong. After the season's over with, Cody Sextander leaves to go to Ole Miss, right? Whole new special team staff comes in. Never heard of any of them. They've never heard of me. I'm in a bad situation, right? So the next year, I actually went to walk-on tryouts. And, I showed up ready to go. I've been practicing my tail off getting ready for this because, like I said, they don't know me. I don't know them. I haven't formed any kind of connection with them. And so I show up and I walk up to the facilities and they're like, "Yeah, you can't be here." I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, we ran you through the NCAA processing center and blah, blah, blah. You're not eligible, so you can't even try to walk on." So I'm like, "Cool, dope, that's all right." So they were like, "You're going to have to just go to college here for a year without any athletics before you're eligible to play it again." So I did that. And so the next year after that, I got Twitter. My best friend Colton O'Neill told me to get Twitter, and he was like, "Man, you just need to start posting highlights and highlights on here." So I did, and the special teams analyst Dakota Tillman reached out to me, and he was like, "I can show you. I mean, I can show you the text if I had them." But he was like, "Can you come and talk with our special teams coordinator tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so, I go in, talk it up with him, and he's like, "All right, here's the deal. We're gonna let you be a manager, pretty much like a water boy. And then, if you can prove to us that you can dedicate yourself to the team, we'll give you a little walk on spot." So I'm like, "All right, sweet. Here we go again. This is fixing to get rolling. Sauce it up." Or slap him in the face, right? Wrong. I did this all summer long. And then we're going into fall camp. And my guy, I am taking reps in practice as a manager. Okay? Like, there were numerous occasions throughout the weeks that they wanted to save their kickers' legs and their punters' legs, and they didn't have them kick. And while the returners were getting reps at kickoff and punt, they were having me doing the kicking, right? And so here I am, my dumb, naive mind thinking, "Oh, yeah, they see some potential here, right?" No, 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 no. No, after like a couple weeks of this, I was fed up with it, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm being selfish here, but I can be able to talk to coach. Because if they're having me kicking fall camp and practice these returners going into the season, they got to be doing this for a reason. So, I go into the coach's office, knock, knock. And I'm like, "Yo, coach, is there any possibility of me walking on here? Like, y'all are having me kick the returners and stuff. Like, it's just kind of confusing. And, you know, and he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "Evan," he said, "I don't think you're good enough to ever play college football." And he said, "You're never going to walk on here. Sorry." So I'm like, "Okay, cool." Dropped out of college. Here I go back in this, kind of a bad mental headspace. And I'm just like, well, I mean, there's no future with kicking. So, what am I going to do now? So I started working on my family's farm here in Arkansas as a rice farmer. And, I did this for about a year and a half. And, just out of the blue, it was January of this year. Okay. January this year, my buddy Garrett Lee, he texted me out of the blue and he's like, "Hey, um, what do you know about semi-pro football?" And I'm like, "Nothing other than what you just told me. It's semi-professional." And he was like, "Well, I don't know if you're interested or not, but we don't have a kicker." He was like, could you come, kick?" And I was like, when? He's like, tomorrow. He's like, practice is tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I go up there and I kick probably 2 or 3 balls. And then the head coach, Terry Jordan, or he's the owner of the team, not the head coach, but him and Coach Brandon McKeever is the head coach. So Brandon McKeever and, Terry Jordan, they approached me and they're just like, hey, we're actually playing a semi-pro preseason game Saturday. Can you play in it? It was against the NEA Galaxy from Jonesboro. And so I'm like, dude, I haven't kicked a ball in a game at this point in 6 years. It has been 6 years since I've taken a live snap as a kicker or punter. So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So you also got to keep in mind, I'm also kind of in this headspace of like, I really am not good enough to be good at kicking. I'm probably just a little better than average. That's just kind of my mentality. So, I go out there, 64-yard punt, 2 touchbacks. And, we're kicking off from the 35-yard line, just like college. And, nothing, didn't do anything special. And so they signed me. They were just like, yeah, I mean, you're our guy. Like, so, I start playing semi-pro, and then, week 1 rolls around because we had played a couple preseason games here and there. And then week 1, I got MVP of the game. Had like a 56-yard punting average, long of 60, 100% on touchbacks, didn't miss any extra points or field goals. And I'm just thinking, man, this is just some watered down church leagues football. Like, I'm nothing special. And so, I was doing this here and there. And, I went through a pretty brutal breakup as this was going on. And, I just started fueling just all my energy from that into football. Every single emotion I felt, I just channeled into just perfecting my craft and just being a better kicker. Because at the time, I didn't have anything going for me. All right. I was working on a farm. All right. And then playing semi-pro football on the weekends with, players who were drinking beer on the sidelines and going out there and just, these guys are working 9 to 5s. They're at the Amazon factory at 4, and they're kicking off for the semi-pro game, pounding beers at 5, 6, whatever it is, right? So like 5 or 6 games roll around of like semi-pro, and like I said, it's just God's timing, man. It's so funny how it works out this way. And this kicker from that team that I mentioned earlier, the NEA Galaxy that was out of Jonesboro, his name is Chase Jordan. He got a lot of potential. He's a pretty decent kicker. I really manifest and pray to God that he gets an opportunity, coming really soon. He's worked his tail off for it. That kid's got the work ethic that takes you the distance. And so he texted me one day and he's like, hey, I got contacted by this arena football team called the Corpus Christi Tritons. And they were like, they want me to, come try out. And I was like, well, okay. I was like, so, I mean, what are you asking me? And he's like, well, I can't do it. I've got a full-time job, man. Like, I'm losing money by going to play arena football because they only pay like $400 a month. I mean, a week. That was also a lie. They pay a lot more than that. The AF1 is loaded with money. I don't care what anybody says. Of every league of arena football, the AF1 is just like, here's like the NAL's the next thing down. It's right here. The AF1's like way up here. I mean, they got Jeff Fisher as a league commissioner. Kind of sponsors they have, like, it's ridiculous. They got TV deals. Like, it's incredible. But anyway, he's like, well, I was kind of thinking about telling them to contact you. And I was like, well, dude, you can go for it. They've never heard of me. They ain't going to give me a shot. So, I get a call from, a Corpus Christi number. And they're like, hey, this is Jay Anderson, head coach for the Corpus Christi Tritons. Could you send me some film? And so I was like, yeah. And I sent him some semi-pro highlights. And he was just like, man, you don't even need to try out. He said, when can you be here? And I was like, what do you mean, when can I be there? And he's like, we're going to sign you. I'm going to email you the contract for the rest of the season right now. He's like, when can you be in Corpus? And I was like tomorrow. So I booked a plane ticket, dropped everything, and then flew to
So
Corpus Christi the next day.
what point in the season was that? Was that before it kicked off? Was it kind of in it?
This
Because
was
I
in,
remember Corpus Christi kind of had a little bit of an issue, it's kind of
oh
think that. So
man,
was that before, after? A
that's a
lot of
whole
the guys.
separate podcast and someone talking about that, clown house that happened there. And it's nothing against Corpus Christi. It's just the whole circumstance was just a whole just I don't even know what you call it. You know, God bless Coach Anderson and all my coaches and the new ownership at Corpus Christi for handling business the way they did. They took a horrible situation and turned it into a phenomenal. We didn't win a game for the rest of the season, but it didn't matter. They had set the tone. They had set the base for what they were doing next year. That's what they were trying to do. But anyway, when I went to Corpus, that was in the middle of the semi-pro season. I had already played 6 or 7 semi-pro games at this point. I think so, yeah, 6 or 7. And so, I mean, this was in the middle of the semi-pro season. I didn't want to screw my semi-pro season team over, but that's the whole point of semi-pro. We were in a developmental semi-professional division, and that's the whole point of semi-pro. And that's it really does get a bad rep. But in my opinion, your talent level will find you regardless of where you are. I will tell anybody that I coach young kickers all the time. They're like, man, I want to get these D1 FBS offers. I'm like, man, you got to understand, getting to that point is not about what you know, it's who you know. And if you're good enough, your talent level will find you regardless of where you are. And it's clearly been the case with me. And so, I left the Arkansas Punishers. That was the name of the team. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. But and then I went off to Corpus. And then, man, let me tell you, the Marina goalposts, they're tight. They're real, real tight. I mean, and it was fun. I mean, I after the season was over with, and I don't think Corpus Christi is going back to the F1 to my knowledge. But, the Washington Wolfpack, they reached out to me and they shot me an offer I really couldn't turn down. And it was a package deal. My good friend Muhammad Al-Azazi, Big Moo, he's going with me to Washington. And they actually reached out to him first. And, like I said, God bless him. He was like, man, I got to have my kicker. And, so they reached out to me and they offered me like way, way more opportunity and everything than Corpus did. So I was like, yeah, I got to take that. And so I just signed with them last month. So I'll be headed to Everett sometime in February or March for, OTAs and fall camps and stuff. Not fall camp, but camp.
So, Evan, you've had a pretty crazy journey. I mean,
Yeah.
not to overplay, the story, but it's been pretty unconventional, right? I mean, so
That's it, so.
not only the college route, military, going to the farm, playing semi-pro, the way that you kind of get your opportunity into professional arena ball, and then you're in a team that's kind of it's a pretty bad situation. The issues they got going on, the players that are leaving, this and that,
And
but
mind you,
somehow,
the old ownership still owes every one of those players, every one of the coaches. They owe all of them money. And like there's no telling how much money they owe them. And I'm not a certified hater only on Tuesdays, but I am a pretty big fan of justiceness. And arena football players, like I said, they're not making the greatest money. I mean, some of them are making upwards of $7,000-8,000 a week, depending on the team you play for and position. Not gonna say any names, but it's probably a team up north. Just saying. But nah, um, yeah, I would really like to bring it to attention that those players, they've worked really hard. They've left a lot behind. Coaches too. And they spent a lot of time away from their families. A lot of their jobs they had to leave just for an opportunity to be playing professional football, get that film. And then they didn't go, they went unpaid for it. And it's just some of the most inspiring people I've ever met. Chase Alasakis, Solo Tusa. We just call him Tusa. Rissy Darnell Anderson II, just a few names that come to mind. These guys were playing with Corpus Christi through all of this, and they stayed. Half the team left. More than half the team left. Only 7 of them stayed. And, it's just the perseverance and the inspiration that they instilled in me. It was extremely inspiring to me being in that situation and seeing them and how they took care of it. And that was just my initial, welcome to professional football. This is the kind of mindset that you have to make it to this level. Is it doesn't matter the circumstances that you're in. When you're given lemons, all right, you make lemon drop shots. Forget the lemonade, all right? Mix some vodka in there, sprinkle lemon juice in there, and have fun with it, all right? That's really all you can do. Just hope that opportunity comes and just keep working as hard as you can, go the extra mile. But, the journey hasn't ended, though. Like I said, I did sign with Washington, and I actually went to there's a pro outdoor team here in Arkansas, just now started. Their first season will be next year. It's the Arkansas Storm. I went to those tryouts, and, I made the team that day. And, so we went to Dallas. We played at showcase game at the Star. And, man, I'm not even going to lie. Like, I don't even want to gas myself up here, but I was popping off that game. I had like a 63-yard punt in the air. I had a few 50-yard punts, and then I had a couple, just little pooch punts. Got to, there's going to be short punts in games. I had I had 2 touchbacks and only 2 kickoffs we did. And we got a penalty on one. So I had to kick off from the 30-yard line, put that one 5 deep. Screw the NFL for making these new NFL kickoff rules. They're dumb. I'm not that good of a kicker, in my opinion, and even I can put it in the end zone from the 30-yard line. These NFL guys have way bigger legs than I do. Just scoot the kickoff back. Every one of those guys can probably reach the end zone from the 20-yard line if you wanted them to. This ain't the 1960s. We don't have a Tom Dempsey just barely making a 65-yard kick. Harrison Butker had a 90-yard kickoff. Andrew Baggett, he's not even in the NFL. He's just a free agent. I think he's retired now. He's done 90-yard kickoffs. Make it more exciting, make it more electrifying, scoot the kickoffs back, and move them back to normal. They're just haters of kickoffs. Show me the stats that say kickoffs are more dangerous than any other aspect of football. They're not. Give the fans what they want. Bring back violence. But anyway, as I was at that game, though, there were a few UFL analysts that were in the stands. I was unaware of this. And so they reached out to my dad, my sister. They were at the game, sitting in the crowd. And they went to them and got my contact information and whatnot. And they reached out to me and they were like, hey, there's a UFL tryout coming out. Every team's going to be there. I'll put in a word for it. You need to be there. So I signed up for that, and I'm headed to San Diego next Saturday for that. And, it's all in God's hands. I'm just going to go do what I know how to do best and just kick a ball.
So that was going to be I have a laundry list of questions here, kind of, but you kind of rolled through a lot of it. But I was going to ask, because of the IFA showcase there between the Storm and the Dallas Prime, obviously you were looking forward, right? You signed, to play in AF1 with the Wolfpack, but you obviously are still pursuing other avenues. And I understand that Arena doesn't usually lock you in. It's still, there's, clauses to be able to get out to essentially move up, right?
It is in my contract that if I am pursued buy a UFL or NFL franchise, then my contract with Washington thus becomes suspended temporarily until, I'm just done doing whatever I am with, whatever team I'm with the UFL, CFL, or NFL.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to pursue it, right? Just to, whether to go out for the combine, the one-on-one workout, whatever it is. It gives you the opportunity to travel, go pursue it. If it
I
turns
mean,
into a 1-2 day thing, yeah, I get it.
I,
Yep.
I really don't have anything but good things to say about the AF1. I mean, they've got like a 8-9 page contract I read over and then had my agent read over. And they do everything by the book and to a T. They are so just detailed and professional about everything they do. Everything down, even down to the fan experience. And it's just I really I can't explain how blessed I am to be playing in the AF1. People think, oh, it's just arena football. Man, a lot of people watch that stuff. I didn't realize that arena football was as big as it was until I got there. My first game was in Oregon, and there weren't really a lot of people in Oregon because, let's just be real, Oregon doesn't really have a huge football fan base in general, other than the Mighty Mighty Ducks. But, I went to Albany, New York, week 2. Dude, that sucker was almost sold out. There's probably upwards of 10,000 fans there. And then I went to Nashville the week after that. That thing was sold out. The whole arena was sold out. And, I'm looking at, they've got Vice TV, they've got Evergreen now broadcasting all this stuff, and they get hundreds of thousands of people viewing these games. It's just like mind blowing, seeing that, in just the span of a month, I went from playing in these recreational park fields with semi-pro, not even cut, to now, I'm stepping on a field with some former NFL guys, former CFL guys, and there's hundreds of thousands of people watching. It's crazy to me that even happened. But I mean, the AF1, they're doing a lot of things right. They got a lot of potential. It's going to be a big season next season. They've added like 4 teams or something like that, all from across the country. It's good.
It may not be done. There's different reports and people talking in the space. They may not be done, but again, I think the way that Minnesota came in, a lot of people thought that kind of happened a year earlier than what it was anticipated to happen due to the arena leagues deals with the different teams. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out between all of the massive shifts, right? It doesn't matter if it's the National Arena League, Arena Football One, the Arena League. Teams are constantly applying to get in the Indoor Football League. I mean, so there's always teams that are looking for a number of things, right? Whether they're looking at the rules for the rosters, right? There's certain things. I mean, the gameplay is one way, but then some teams want to play Ironman football. Some teams don't want to. Some
Absolutely.
teams don't want to spend the money with the nets. Some teams don't. There's just a number of things, and sometimes it may not even be the team itself. It could be the venue of what Again, it's an ecosystem, and everything kind of plays in. So everyone's looking at everything. Different leagues pay different things, and it's the bottom line across the board. But then there's also kind of a prestige element to it. So
Absolutely.
the teams, are starting to look at, okay, what league are we at? What's our regional travel, right? So maybe we're on an island, we're a little too far away. So now, maybe we need to look at a league that has teams closer to our geographical region. So it makes it, the travel more feasible, not just the time, but the cost of it, right? So again, a number of, reasons, factors that why teams consider putting applications in and what does or does not happen. So, and then you always have the teams that kind of last minute go in dormant status, right? Go on a hiatus for a year or two.
There's a lot of those.
Right? So, I mean,
I
again,
think
a
you're
lot to be
familiar
seen.
with friend Justin Arth.
Justin's been on the show twice. Yep.
Man, that is, he's got a pretty crazy story too. And that's what's been his situation every time. Every team that he's been to has been, a team that was just last minute. They were just like, hey, we need to step back and reevaluate ourselves. And it's just, I feel for Justin, man. He is a elite, grade A quarterback. He's the best quarterback I've ever played with, hands down. And it's just he got the bad end of the stick. And like I said, he's a great example of that. He just keeps trying. He is what an elite athlete is supposed to be. He has made it his profession, and his profession is to keep playing football no matter what it takes. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of stuff that plays in the account with arena football.
And I think that kind of adds to the stigma, to the casual sports fan, or let's say the casual football fan. A lot of people like to think it's NFL or bust, right? You go to look at Division I football, it's FBS, but yet power now, I'd say 4, but used to be power 5. Like, people didn't want to look at, your, you look at somebody like Notre Dame, and they're an independent. So, but a lot of other independents don't get that. I mean, I get history and whatever, but sometimes that power, they look at them in that power 4 situation, even if they're on a island all by themselves. It's just, people have their stigmas, people have their beliefs, and some people are just going to be kind of tried and true into it. But that's why, it's odd, because the American aspect of the underdog, right? The less desired, the less known commodity, right? Whenever that's on television, if you're looking at March Madness, everyone loves the Cinderella story, right? So it's odd when you kind of look at football, because there is a lot of other football. Okay, you got the United Football League, right? If somebody goes plays in Canada, a lot of people like to bag on the Canadian game. I get it. It's not our 4-down football. They play, on a different size field. The goalposts are in the front. Now, things are going to be changing with that here in the next, couple of years. Their games have become a little bit more Americanized. Still, the field can be wider. Still going to be larger end zone stuff. But, people look at it and don't give it any credit when it's been around for over 100 years. It's actually been around longer than the National Football League. So
exactly.
it's interesting, like, what we give. I mean, we as a general group give credit to, and the status to, and all that type of stuff, and what we don't. I get it. Money, fame. The NFL is king, but in the process, there's been some people that have come through these different pathways that have made it. Okay. And a perfect example is looking at the non-traditional sense of a position that you're playing in, kicker.
Yeah.
Right? If we look right now, and there's 2 guys really that stand out. You have the Cowboys kicker and you have the Lions kicker. And they came from the United Football League previously. And the one playing in Dallas wasn't a football guy. He was of the other football, right? They got drafted in Major League Soccer in Toronto FC, and then he decided to take some other route, went and played in the USFL. It's the one of the leagues that end up merging, the XFL to create the United Football League. But he played for the Birmingham Stallions and did very well. And also now he's
the best kicker in the league. I've got him on my fantasy team. That dude pops off like 20 points a week. I love me some Brandon.
Aubrey's no joke. But then you got Bates that was, killing it up with the Michigan Panthers before, the Detroit Lions came calling. It's just there. If these pathways didn't exist, I still believe that maybe we wouldn't have the best product that we're seeing on Sundays, come the fall and on Sundays. And so I know there's going to be that. And you come from, again, a very unconventional, like, even some of these guys, you come from even a pathway that's kind of a little broken, a little shifted here, a little bit of that. But I'm glad to see that you're taking these opportunities, showcases. And I know there's been a lot of issues and stuff around the IFA, but it was a showcase game. You took advantage of it. it seems to have now opened at least another door. We'll see what happens with that showcase, or you're going to be going to here in a little bit with the United Football League. And when you get these opportunities, you're still moving forward. And I think that is the proof in the pudding, so to speak, is
Exactly.
that football now has a lot of opportunities. I think we're kind of in a point in history, if we're going to compare it. I know the arena side of it is not comparable, but it's almost like going back to the 60s when it was AFL, NFL pre-merger. There was a bunch of these other professional leagues. I know everyone wants to come, but there's professional continental football league, the Texas football. I mean, like there's a bunch of just
Yeah.
regionalized components. Someone came together, someone kind of, and then when they disbanded, they got teams still stayed alive. They just played in different leagues. But it's interesting because I think we're pretty much in the same time. It's just we're playing them in different times of the year, and now with the arena aspect or multiple arena leagues, I think there's more players playing professionally than before, but a lot of people don't want to give it, the attention that it used to even get. And
I think it deserves more than it has. I really do.
it's interesting because you think about the number of people that were watching football back in the day. Maybe
Yeah.
they didn't have, Jerry's World like we have today, but I mean, like some of the older football stadiums, look at Division Ones. There's some 100,000 seat stadiums, or even the ones that are not pretty much still up there. So it's like we have a lot of football, and it's just interesting on who wants to give it credit. And maybe it's the time of the year. I know the arena thing. Obviously, it's a 50-yard game. It's got walls. It's very, very different, but it's still football.
It's vicious. It's so vicious.
Well, it's much more high energy. It's action packed. It's just one of those things that, depending on the type of players you're looking for, if you're looking for more of an up tempo team, if you're looking for this and that, yeah, no, I mean, I understand it's not long drives, but
I will say that about arena, that I've noticed that a good arena football player might not make a good outdoor football player, and a good outdoor football player might not make a good arena football player, because it's two completely. It takes a whole different skill set in the arena versus playing in outdoors, and I think it's kind of starting to gain some traction, and people are starting to see that arena and normal outdoor football are very, very different, and they're fun and exciting in their own ways. And people are always going to watch outdoor football way more just because it's always been the tradition. Arena is never going to be bigger than the NFL. But although I do think, if people would not really put a bad rep on arena and give it the credit that personally I legitimately think it really deserves. I truly believe. Arena football, you might have some teams playing at these NBA stadiums in the very near future and selling them out. It is so exciting to watch when you're actually there.
It happened in the past.
I did not know that.
I mean, well, you got to think about some of the teams that, Arena Football League had its heyday where they were playing in the much larger arenas. I mean, you got do some research. Go back to the day of Kurt Warner playing in the Arena Football League with the Iowa Barnstormers, and you'll realize that's what resurrected his career. He had a shot in the National Football League, panned out. He was bagging groceries. I mean, there's a movie about his whole story. I think what they call it, the Underdog Story, whatever it was. I haven't seen the movie, but I know it's out there. But I mean, if you follow that, there were teams. I'm not saying every team that was in it. It was so big that at one point the Arena Football League created an AFL2. And then they started playing in some smaller arenas, like up in Rochester, New York, where the Rochester Brigade, which I attended games back years ago for its brief few years that it lasted. But things got to a point that there was even a players' union. And it got, I'm just saying, if you're not aware of the history attached to it, that would have been its heyday. Again, a lot of growth, a lot of interest. That was back a tail end of it, but John Bon Jovi owned a team, the Philadelphia Soul, and I mean, there's a lot of. Oh yeah, so it sounds like an arena guy needs to do a little more research into the history of
A
arena.
lot more research in their ring. A lot
Yeah,
more.
but I mean, just there was a point, that even Jerry Jones himself owned an arena team called the Desperados. So I'm just saying, like, it's interesting. Even the big money people were involved in it and stuff. It's just, again, everything kind of has its shelf life, so to speak. And it was just a time, I think the players union came in at a point where maybe they weren't quite ready for it. The players wanted more money because they were on NBC with games. They had their own PlayStation 2 game out. I believe it was like the Road to Glory or something like that. But there was a PlayStation 2 video game they had for arena football.
Oh, that was cool. If I could be in
I'm
a
just saying,
PlayStation.
yeah, I mean, you could probably find that in one of those, retro gaming places. You pick yourself up a PS2 and in the game, and you could do it. But I mean, yeah, no, it's like, I think obviously uh past the halfway point of my 40s now, so I lived a different life, obviously, than just times, right? So I got to see things a little bit differently. I remember turning on TV and be able to watch, I mean, not like streaming apps, I mean like real, and catch it like on NBC. It was pretty crazy back in the day. It's just, but again, I think we're at a heyday though now, where we have a bunch of these smaller leagues, right? We don't maybe have an AFL and AFL2, but we do have multiple leagues. I think there's a bunch of teams. If we got to start looking at it, we're kind of back in the mix. We look at how we are outdoors. I think we're at a place with the United Football League. There is a hello, and we got United Football League. The IFA is trying to do its thing. Got the Continental Football League kind of coming in. I mean, there's a bunch of other professional leagues that are in the works, or that are starting to make their footprint. And we'll have to see what that looks like in the next year or two. Which ones can really the make the headway to actually become stable. Like, I think the IFA's got its work cut out for itself, just only because of the mishaps it's had since trying to launch in 2023. The
I
Continental
don't
Football
think that
League.
it'll last long. I don't like I said, I don't want to hate on anybody, but the IFA is just they have if they want to succeed, they have their kinks they need to work out.
Well, it starts
And
with individual team ownership.
exactly.
Everything, one solid team, two solid teams, even if you're able to get that, that's not enough to carry a league. If you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you're got some questionable ownership groups in, or maybe the ownership groups are not questionable, maybe they just don't have the means to really pull off what needs to be done. It's better just not to field, a team or a league of teams like that. Again, that's where it causes more problems in the space. That's where people lose credibility. That's where it puts players in jeopardy, and that's in coaches staffs and whoever, people that depend on it for a paycheck, people that depend on it for whether it's film, to keep their career or their prospects moving forward. But more importantly, you lose the fans. Any credibility with the fans, there's not going to be a league anyway.
I mean, once that's gone, I mean, once that's out the door, you're not going to have a league anymore. Once
Right.
the fans are hating on your own teams.
Well, Evan, why don't I give you one, because the time wise here, but give you kind of one last soapbox moment here. Anything that you
Yeah.
haven't talked about, right? So you got the UFL coming up, and let's say one of those coaches, director of player personnel, or somebody gets on the show, or turns on the show, and they got you. What's the one last thing that you think no one knows about you, right? That's pretty important if they're gonna, think about giving you a shot, right? Whether it's attend the showcase, whether they bring you in for a personal workout, what's the one thing? All right, your story is your story, but now where you're at, right? You're a
I'll
different
tell
guy
you,
than where you were at when you're 18 years old, 19 years old, college age, going through those things. So who are you today, and what is it that they need to know about you?
I'll say this, and I can pretty much just leave it at this. I'm a clean blank slate. All right. That's one can be a disadvantage depending on the scenario, life circumstances. But, for the most part, if there was a team that wanted to pick me up, that would be probably one of the first things I would bring up is, like I said, I'm 6'5", 170. All right. I'm significantly skinnier than these other guys playing in the UFL and NFL that are the same height as me. They outweigh me by 50, 60 pounds. And, the best way that I describe it is, if you were a team and you wanted to take an investment into me and take a chance on me, this sounds very cocky, but like it's kind of the same thing as like buying a Lamborghini without the motor in it. I've got the height and the leverage. I mean, that's puts me in the 1% of kickers. You don't find kickers my height. You got a couple here and there, and they're mainly punters because you want taller punters. But like I said, I got the height, and then the real big, the killer is the leg speed. I ran track in high school, and I didn't mention that. A lot of people if you talk to people from my hometown, I was a lot better at track than I was football. I was nationally ranked with track. I ran hurdles. And, I have a very, 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 fast leg. That's why, being as undersized as I am, I can kick it the same distance as these NFL, UFL guys is because of that. And my kicking Coach King that I had in high school, I went and kicked him the other day. I haven't seen him in years. And that was the first thing he said. He watched me kick one ball and he went, "Dear God, if you put on 40, 50 pounds with that leg speed and your height, I wouldn't doubt at all you kick a ball 90 yards with ease." And, that's something that you're getting with me. You have somebody that's been doing this. I've been kicking almost every day since the time I was in 8th grade. So the consistency is there, and the leg speed's there, the height's there. The only thing I'm missing is weight. And I'll be honest, I can't really afford to feed myself what I need to eat to get to that weight because, man, I'll be honest, it's a lot of calories.
Yeah,
And
I can imagine. I can
and
imagine.
where I'm at right now, I can't even afford a gym membership either. So it's not. I can put on a little bit of weight, and I've been trying. So I am up 10 pounds. I was 160 during arena, and I'm up to 170 now. But that would be my main selling point is just I'm humble enough to admit that I'm probably not what you really want out of a kicker at the exact moment. But if you were to invest the time, just to get me there to that kind of weight and that kind of size, I guarantee you, I mean, I would be maybe not a top tier NFL kicker, but I would for certain if I get a little bit bigger, I definitely think I'd be up there, maybe top 15 kickers in the NFL or UFL. I'd be fine with the UFL making a career out of that. There ain't no shame in that. But that's probably the last thing that's the only thing I could say is just there's a lot of potential here waiting, and I'm just waiting for someone to give me a shot that I can prove that. And I certainly believe that I can. God's got a reason for everything, and He's gotten me this far for a reason.
I do believe in that. It's His plan. It's not our plan. It's His plan, and we're along for the ride. And we may not know it, but we're going to see it unfold.
Absolutely.
In real time. I mean, whether we know it or not. But Evan, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show to discuss your football journey.
Man, I am honored that you had me on here. I've heard a lot about your podcast, through the football world. I was tickled to death when you asked me to come on.
Well, I'm glad that you reached out because, again, there's so many players, so many different places, and I didn't really have the opportunity to kind of know who you were until I dove into it a little bit. And obviously I'm learning a lot more just sitting here listening. So I know you have a long off season ahead of you, and there's a lot yet to still, unfold with that, with your UFL showcase and whatnot. So I wish you the best of health. and luck. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have both of them on your side, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you still got to train, right? There's everything goes in between, and then you got to travel and get the right sleep and have the right day when you have those opportunities. We'll see how things unfold, how they transpire for you. And we'll, never know. Maybe we can have you later on come back and catch up to see where you're at in a year's time or so. You're young enough, so it's not like you're on the back end of of your life as an athlete. So you're really just getting started, and you're still pretty raw because your pathways kind of brought you into it from a very, very different way. So I look forward to keeping an eye on you with the AF1 season, or depending on how things transpire here with the UFL. I look forward to seeing how things transpire for you.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm super, super grateful you've had me on here. It's been fun. It's been fun. I've enjoyed this.
Well, before you go, if you don't mind, can you take a moment for those that are tuning in and that might be interested in following you in your journey? Where can they follow you on what social media platforms?
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of my social media usernames, they're all the same thing. They're all Evan, EVAN, 3, YRD, and every single one of them are the same. Right. But I'm probably most active on Instagram and Facebook, so I would probably say hop on one of those.
Okay. Well, perfect. Thank you, Evan.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. When Evan reached out to the show, I realized I haven't had many special team players on. Being a kicker punter specialist and having a somewhat unique pathway, I knew he deserved the opportunity to share his journey. I'm grateful that he messaged the show and honored to share his story. That concludes another show. Thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to having everyone back for an all-new episode of Player 54 Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into today's show. You can support the show and our partners by using code PLAYER54 at checkout at any of the following websites: RoyalRetros.com, where you can save 15%, TrueVictory.com, where you can save 15%, BuckedUp.com, where you can save 20%, ImpactMouthguards.com, where you can save 10%, HobbyArmor.com, where you can save 5%, JustMeatJerky.com, where you can save 10%. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe and rate Player 54 Podcast on your platforms of choice. Do you have a question or topic you would like to have discussed on the show? Message us via social media or send an email to player54podcast@gmail.com.